Be me Isabella, 28, senior marketing analyst at a decent tech firm. Life is good. Great, even. Have a solid career track, my own apartment in a city that's not actively collapsing, and I'm what most people would call conventionally attractive. And I have Daniel. Daniel is 30. He's a high school history teacher. He's the kind of man who gets unanimously voted favorite teacher every year. He's kind, patient, smells faintly of old books and coffee, and has this laugh that could probably calm a rabid dog. We've been together for 5 years. 5 years of inside jokes, lazy Sunday mornings, navigating each other's family holidays, and building a life that fits together like two puzzle pieces you didn't realize were from the same box. He's perfect, so what's the problem? The problem is my mother, Catherine, or more accurately, the voice of my mother that has taken up permanent residence in the back of my mind. My mother is a force of nature. A second-wave feminist icon in her own circles. She shattered glass ceilings back when they were made of reinforced concrete. Her mantras were my bedtime stories. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Never settle, Isabella. Your options are endless. The most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. Growing up, I worshipped her. She was this towering figure of independence. She'd built a successful career, raised me on her own, and never once showed an ounce of weakness or regret. Her life was a testament to the power of a woman who refused to compromise, and I absorbed it all. I believed with every fiber of my being that my life was a buffet of limitless choices, and I should sample everything before I even thought about committing to a single dish. This mindset has served me well in my career. I've been aggressive, taken risks, and climbed the ladder faster than most of my peers. But in my relationship with Daniel, it's a different story. Every time things get serious, my mother's voice kicks in. Daniel will be talking about mortgage rates, casually mentioning houses with backyards big enough for a dog, and my brain screams, is this it? A history teacher and a mortgage. What about that venture capitalist you met at that conference? What about moving to London? Your options are endless. He'll bring up marriage, always gently, always hypothetically. He'll say something like, my cousin just got engaged. The ring is beautiful, you'd like something simpler, right? And a cold sweat breaks out on my neck. I see a cage. A beautiful, comfortable, loving cage, but a cage nonetheless. I'll deflect with a joke, change the subject, or use the ultimate excuse my mother taught me. I'm focusing on my career right now. Daniel, being Daniel, is endlessly patient. He'll just smile, kiss my forehead, and say, of course, I'm proud of you. But I see the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. A flicker that's been lasting a little longer each time. He's a good man, a great man, he's my best friend. But my mother's voice whispers, is a good man enough? You're meant for more than just good. You're meant for extraordinary. I felt like I was living a double life. The Isabella who was deeply in love with Daniel, and the Isabella who was terrified of closing the door on a million other theoretical lives. The conflict was a constant, low-level hum of anxiety beneath the surface of my otherwise happy life. I didn't realize that hum was about to become a deafening siren. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in the middle of a presentation trying to convince a room full of executives that our new marketing strategy wasn't completely insane. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. A text from an unknown number, is this Isabella? This is your mother's neighbor. There's been an accident. My blood ran cold. I excused myself, my voice shaking, and ran out of the conference room. The neighbor, a kind older woman named Maria, explained that she hadn't seen my mother for a day, which was unusual. She used the spare key and found Catherine on the floor of her living room, conscious but in immense pain. She'd fallen. Broken her hip, I drove to the hospital in a daze. When I arrived, I saw my mother on a gurney in the emergency room hallway, and for the first time in my life, she looked small. Catherine, the titan, the unflappable force of nature, was pale and vulnerable. Her carefully constructed armor of stoic independence had been shattered. The doctor explained the surgery, the recovery, the months of physical therapy. It was serious. At her age, a broken hip isn't a minor setback, it's a life-altering event. I called Daniel from the hospital waiting room, my voice cracking. I'm on my way, he said, no hesitation. He arrived 20 minutes later, still in his teacher clothes, a worn copy of The Guns of August tucked under his arm. He just wrapped his arms around me and held me. He didn't offer platitudes or solutions. He just absorbed my panic and fear, a silent, steady presence in the sterile chaos of the ER. In that moment, he wasn't a settled option, he was my anchor. The next few weeks were a blur. My mother had the surgery and I became her primary caregiver. I took a leave of absence from work and moved into her apartment. Her apartment was exactly like her, immaculate, stylish, and fiercely independent. It was a museum of her success. Awards on the shelves, art from her travels on the walls, a library of feminist literature and classic novels. But as I spent my days and nights there, I started to notice something else. The silence. It was a deep, profound silence that the hum of the refrigerator couldn't fill. The second bedroom was a pristine guest room, but the bed looked like it had never been slept in. The dining table, which could easily seat 8, was covered in a thin layer of dust. I realized I'd never seen my mother host a dinner party. Her social life revolved around professional networking events and formal fundraisers. The phone started ringing. It was her friends, powerful women, CEOs, lawyers, academics. They'd all say the same thing. "Catherine, darling, how dreadful. You're so strong you'll be back on your feet in no time. Let me know if there's anything you need." But the offer was always hollow. No one offered to come sit with her for an afternoon. No one brought a casserole. No one offered to drive her to a follow-up appointment. Their support was a professional courtesy, not a personal connection. One afternoon, I was helping my mother with her physical therapy exercises. She was frustrated, in pain, and her pride was wounded. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, pushing the walker away. "I don't need help. Mom, the doctor said you have to do these," I pleaded. "The doctor doesn't know me," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. "I've never needed anyone's help in my life." It was in that moment that I saw the crack in her armor wasn't just from the fall. It was a deep, structural flaw that had been there for years. Her fierce independence wasn't just a strength. It was a fortress she'd built around herself. A fortress that kept everyone out, including, I was beginning to realize, genuine intimacy and support. In stark contrast to the echoing silence of my mother's world, there was Daniel. He was just there. He never waited for me to ask for help. He just anticipated what was needed and did it. He'd show up after a long day of teaching with 2 containers of soup, one for me, one for my mom. He'd quietly do the dishes, take out the trash, or run to the pharmacy. One Saturday, I came out of my mother's bedroom to find him patiently fixing her wobbly bookshelf. He hadn't mentioned it was broken. He just saw a problem and fixed it. My mother watched him from her recliner, her expression a mixture of suspicion and grudging respect. "You know, Isabella," she said one evening after Daniel had left, "he's a very capable man." Coming from Catherine, this was the equivalent of a Nobel Prize nomination. "He's a good person, Mom," I said, my voice soft. She just grunted, a sound I couldn't quite decipher. A few days later, I was looking for a spare blanket and opened a chest in the guest room. Inside, beneath a collection of old quilts, was a photo album. It was from her life before me. There were pictures of her in her 20s, vibrant and full of revolutionary fire at protests and rallies. And in many of the photos, there was a man. He had kind eyes, a gentle smile, and a guitar was never far from his hands. They looked happy, genuinely, uncomplicatedly happy. I brought the album to her. "Who was this?" I asked, pointing to the man. She was silent for a long time, tracing his face with her finger. "That was Michael," she said finally. "He was a musician, a wonderful man." "What happened?" she sighed, a long, weary sound. "He wanted to get married. He wanted to move to the suburbs and have a family. He was a good man, but he wasn't ambitious. He didn't have the fire. I wanted to change the world, not change diapers." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a lifetime of conviction. "I made the right choice. I have no regrets." But I heard the tremor in her voice. I saw the way she clutched the photo album. For the first time, I wondered if the stories she told herself and the stories that were true were 2 different things. I started to see my own life in a new light. I thought about the men I'd briefly dated before Daniel, ambitious, high-powered men. The kind of men my mother would have approved of. They were exciting, yes, but they were also self-absorbed. Their lives were a series of transactions. My relationship with them felt like a negotiation. Daniel, his love wasn't transactional. It was a gift, freely given, with no expectation of anything other than love in return. And I had been treating it like it was just one of many options on a shelf, something I could pick up or put down at will. The turning point came about a month into my mother's recovery. I was exhausted. I was juggling caring for my mother, trying to keep up with work remotely, and navigating the emotional minefield of my mother's fragile pride. Daniel had taken me out to dinner, insisting I needed a break. We were sitting in our favorite Italian restaurant, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and Chianti bottles with candles melted over them. I was picking at my pasta, my mind a million miles away. "Hey," Daniel said, his voice gentle. He reached across the table and took my hand. "Talk to me." And it all came spilling out, my frustration with my mother, my fear of her mortality, my confusion about my own life. "I feel like my entire life has been built on this foundation that's starting to crack," I confessed, tears welling in my eyes. "Everything she taught me, I'm not sure it's the whole truth." Daniel listened patiently, his thumb rubbing circles on the back of my hand. When I was done, he was quiet for a moment. "Isabella," he said, his voice serious but kind, "I love you, you know that, right?" I nodded, my throat tight, "and I think I've been patient. I've tried to give you the space you said you needed to figure things out." He took a deep breath. "But I need a partner, not a theoretical partner for someday in the future, a partner for now. I want to build a life with you. I want to face the good and the bad with you. I want to be the person you call when things fall apart and the person you celebrate with when they go right." He wasn't giving me an ultimatum, he was just stating a fact, a need. "I can't keep waiting on the sidelines of your life, hoping you'll eventually choose to let me in all the way," he said. "It's not fair to you and it's not fair to me." Every word landed like a stone in my gut. He was right. I had been keeping him at arm's length, treating our 5-year relationship like a trial run. I was so afraid of making the wrong choice that I was failing to make any choice at all. And in doing so, I was at risk of losing the best thing that had ever happened to me. "I don't know what to do," I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I think you do," he said softly. "You just have to be brave enough to admit it to yourself." That night, I went back to my mother's apartment and I couldn't sleep. Daniel's words echoed in my head. I walked into the living room. My mother was asleep in her hospital bed, the soft glow of a nightlight casting long shadows on the walls. The silence of the apartment felt different now. It wasn't peaceful, it was crushing. I saw a future stretching out before me, one that looked a lot like this apartment. A life of professional success and personal isolation. A life of endless options, all of them leading to a quiet room where the only company was the hum of the refrigerator. My mother stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Isabella, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice raspy with sleep. I sat down in the chair beside her bed. "I'm scared," I admitted, the words barely a whisper. "Don't be," she said, her old, stoic self kicking in. "You're strong, you're my daughter." "No, Mom," I said, looking her directly in the eyes. "That's not what I mean." And for the first time, I was truly honest with her. "I'm scared of ending up like you." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and sharp. I saw a flicker of hurt in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by something else. A weary resignation. She was quiet for a long time. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece. "Your father, Michael," she began, her voice cracking. "He wasn't your father, but he could have been." She started to talk, and the carefully constructed narrative of her life began to unravel. She told me about the love she'd felt for him, a love she'd dismissed as a youthful indulgence. She told me about the fear she'd had, the fear of being ordinary, of being subsumed by a man, a family, a life that wasn't extraordinary. "I thought strength was about never needing anyone," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "I thought independence was the ultimate prize." She reached out and took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "I was wrong, Isabella. I built a career, I made a difference, but I come home to an empty apartment every night. My friends are my colleagues, my successes are my companions." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I taught you how to be a strong woman. But I forgot to teach you how to be a happy one. I forgot to tell you that sometimes the bravest option isn't to keep all your doors open. It's choosing one and walking through it with someone you love." The dam inside me broke. I leaned forward and hugged her, and we cried together. It wasn't the cathartic crying of a movie scene. It was the messy, painful, gut-wrenching sob of two women mourning the choices that had led them to this quiet, lonely room. In that moment, I realized my mother wasn't an icon to be emulated. She was a woman. A flawed, beautiful, and deeply human woman who had made choices based on the information and the ideology she had at the time. And I realized what I had to do. I had to choose, not an option, not a possibility, a choice, and my choice was Daniel. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The constant hum of anxiety was gone. I knew what I wanted. I made my mother breakfast and we talked, really talked, not as a feminist icon and her disciple, but as a mother and daughter. I told her about Daniel's words, about my fears, and about my decision. She listened, and for the first time, she didn't offer advice from her feminist playbook. She just offered her support. "He's a good man, Isabella," she said, her voice filled with a quiet, newfound wisdom. "Don't let him go," I called Daniel. My hands were shaking. "Can we meet?" I asked. We met at the park near his school. He was sitting on a bench, grading papers. He looked up as I approached, his expression guarded. I sat down next to him. I didn't have a grand speech prepared. I just had the truth. "You were right," I said, my voice steady, "about everything." I told him I loved him. I told him I was sorry for taking him for granted, for treating our love like a safety net instead of a destination. "I've been so obsessed with keeping my options open that I almost missed the best option that was right in front of me the whole time," I said. I took a small box out of my pocket. His eyes widened. "Isabella, Daniel," I said, opening the box to reveal a simple, elegant watch. "I know this is backward and I don't have a ring, but will you marry me?" Tears welled in his eyes. He let out a shaky laugh. "You're proposing to me?" "I am," I said, my heart pounding. "I want to be your partner in everything for the rest of my life if you'll still have me." He pulled me into his arms, kissing me with a passion and a relief that took my breath away. "Yes," he whispered against my lips. "Of course, yes." We sat on that bench for a long time, just holding each other. The future didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like an open door. A door I was finally ready to walk through as long as he was walking with me. It's been 2 years since that day in the park. Daniel and I are married now. We bought a house with a backyard big enough for a dog, and we got one. A clumsy, lovable golden retriever named Gus. My mother is doing much better. Her recovery was long, but she's regained most of her mobility. She's still fiercely independent, but something has changed. The fortress walls have come down. She comes over for dinner every Sunday. She and Daniel have developed an unlikely friendship, bonding over a shared love of historical biographies. He even convinced her to join a book club. Sometimes I'll find her just sitting on our porch, watching Gus chase squirrels, a small, genuine smile on her face. Last month, she told me she'd reconnected with Michael, the musician from the photo album. He's a widower now, living a few towns over. They're just having coffee, she says, but her eyes sparkle when she talks about him. As for me, I'm still ambitious. I still love my career. But my definition of a successful life has expanded. I've learned that feminism isn't about rejecting partnership, it's about having the freedom to choose it. It's not about being an island. It's about being strong enough to build a bridge to another person. My mother taught me to be a strong woman, but Daniel and my mother's unexpected vulnerability taught me that true strength isn't about never needing anyone. It's about having the wisdom to know who to lean on and the courage to let them lean on you too. I didn't settle, I chose, and it was the best choice I ever made.